Okay, I think, Steve, we'd probably get started here.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Dente, and I am the chair of Hospitality Newfoundland Labrador, and I'm going to be the MC for today's event. We're very pleased that you've joined us all today for a conversation with the Honourable Melanie Joly and the Honourable Bernard Davis. Tourism Week is an acknowledgement of Canada's tourism industry, workers, and captivating attractions that welcome visitors from home and abroad. This year, Tourism Week looks a little bit different than most years, but technology has enabled us to come together as a community online to highlight the many reasons why tourism is a key economic driver in Newfoundland and Labrador and an integral part of the province's culture. On behalf of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador and our board of directors, I'd like to take a second to extend a very warm welcome to both Ministers Davis and Joly, and to all of our participants who joined us today. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. For the purpose of this Zoom webinar, participants were asked to send questions in advance. And after the presentation, there'll be a Q&A section where these questions will be addressed in conversational style with our guests. Joining us today, again, is Minister Joly, Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages, and Minister Davis, Minister of Tourism, Culture, Industry, and Innovation. But before we introduce them for some remarks, I'd like to call upon another special guest that's taken some time to join us today. The Honourable Seamus O'Regan, Minister of Natural Resources, to say a few words. Minister O'Regan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Steve. I won't take up too much time. First of all, just wanted to say that I don't think any of us expected to be having a conversation about our industry under these circumstances. Nobody predicted this, and we all know that this is going to be a tough season. You know, the provincial government is doing what it can, most recently with its announcement of $25 million, and certainly federally, Melanie has been an absolute champion for the industry in making sure that the program that we've put out over the past 2-3 months, that it takes into account the importance of the tourism industry and the very unique nature of it. She has a great appreciation, as does Bern, of how important the industry is to this province, and how once we get through this, the promise of this industry is still very much with us. This is not going to be easy to get through, and I'll acknowledge that, but the positive, the optimism that this industry always has had, firmly rooted in reality, because we've got a great product to sell, that will still be there. So it's important that, you know, as tough as these times are, that we not that fact. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it flippantly. I know how tough this is going to be, but when we get through it, this industry will just be stronger, if you ask me. The level of provincial and federal cooperation, the level of cooperation with industry, you know, who knew how well Zoom would work, and who knew how well these would all work? I was on a call last night with all my provincial colleagues, and we're working together at an unprecedented level, regardless of political party, regardless of region, regardless of province or territory. And Mel's experience has been the same. Bern's has been the same. And on another level too, you know, tomorrow I got a meeting with the UN's International Energy Agency, and we're cooperating on an international level. So, you know, the old standbys, together we'll get through it. But by God, that's the truth. Together we will get through it. And but you know, we've got to look after one another as we go through these next 3 months. It's not going to be easy, but the promise of this industry remains the same, remains exactly the same, and it is right. So I'll pass it back to you, Steve, just to acknowledge that, you know, Bern and Mel, we get thrown, I'm sure, some good questions at them. They know this industry very well. And just in case she forgets to mention, Melanie is a huge fan of Mary Brown's. And for no other reason than that, I think we should all be endeared by that fact. She has great taste.
Oh my.
Thank you, Minister O'Regan. Appreciate those comments, and also appreciate you being a champion for tourism for the province in Ottawa on a constant basis, and appreciate you being here with us. So for opening remarks, I'll turn to Minister Joly first, and then we can go to Minister Davis. So yes, go ahead, Minister Joly, whenever you'd like.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you all. Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for organizing this. And thank you all for being on this important Zoom. My close relationship with Mary Brown. It's always great to reiterate that. And obviously, I wanted to talk to all of you in the context of what's going on right now. And I know that the anxiety is high, and I know that it is driven by the uncertainty of dealing with the economic crisis and the fact that there's a pandemic. And at the same time, it's Tourism Week. So it is a time where we take stock of what's going on. We organize ourselves together, we talk to each other, and we are allies together to make sure that this industry is well represented and well defended. So in this context, let me just talk to you about very quickly the different measures that we're putting forward for the tourism sector. But also, I would like also to acknowledge the fact that Goody Hutchins has been working extremely hard on making sure that the tourism interests of Newfoundland are well defended. And there's my parliamentary secretary also, René Arsenault, who's working with me on OCOA. And he's on the Zoom. So thanks, folks, for being with us. So the different measures, you all know about the wage subsidy. The wage subsidy is extended until the end of August. And we can have conversation as to what's next for the wage subsidy. The other measure, obviously, also is the SEBA account. Good news, now sole proprietors have access to the SEBA account. The SEBA account is the $40,000 loan, which includes a $10,000 forgivable, so it becomes a $10,000 subsidy. Also, there's the support through ACOA to make sure that for businesses that are falling through the cracks, particularly in the tourism sector, come and see us. Let's have a conversation. Let's make sure that we find solutions and that we can help you out. And there's definitely also the rent relief program and the different other types of measures that can be there for you folks. Finally, last thing, well, you know, we are, as the pandemic, the health risks is going down, we know now what is much more the impacts of the economic crisis on people. And so we wanted to make sure that there would be support for Canadians that are working in the tourism sector. So that's why tourism sector workers have been included in the CERB, but also we would love to have your feedback as to how can we make sure that people working in the sector, so the workers, are well supported. So let's have this conversation. Let's be frank, let's be direct, and meanwhile, let's work to make sure that we find solutions. And like Seamus was saying very well in his presentation, let's make sure that we seize the opportunity, that we seize the promise of this sector and bounce back very strongly in the next couple of months. And definitely we hope for the next year. And let me tell you that we will be there and we'll have your back. Go there.
Thank you, Minister Joly, and I look forward to hearing the answers to the pre-submitted questions that you have from operators, and we can engage in a discussion shortly. Minister Davis, I'll turn to you now if you wanted to say a few words to get us started. Oh, Minister Davis is muted there, guys. Oh. You're muted, Minister Davis.
You talk so much.
You're good. You're good now.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me now? I sound like a Verizon commercial. I just wanted to say how happy I am to get the opportunity to speak with so many operators here at the one time. It's always a tough act to follow Seamus. I always say that when I speak after him. I'd sooner speak before, because then I can build him up a lot so he can never meet the criteria I put him at. So that's always good that way. And I just want to take this opportunity during Tourism Awareness Week to say thank you to you as the operators, the great work you do. You've built what we sell here in this province, and we do it very, very well. From my standpoint, we could not be successful in the tourism operations in this province without you. It's built on people. It's not faceless corporations. It's our neighbors, it's our family members, it's our brothers, sisters. It's so very important that we all work together. And as Melanie and Seamus has said, we will get through this together. The relationship with the federal government on this initiative right from day one has been fantastic. I know all of my colleagues are speaking about it. I speak to Minister Joly and Minister O'Regan on many, many occasions. We have a call right after this one with our federal colleagues right across the country, which is our regular Thursday meeting. And it's great to hear from my colleagues across the country, because that's helped Melanie and her team fix some of the programs that, and we've seen the flexibility that the federal government has seen, and we're quite happy with that. And I know the operators that we've talked with have been happy with that as well. And I'm one of the luckiest ministers in all of Newfoundland and Labrador, because every minister that ever gets elected, or every MHA that ever had gotten elected in Newfoundland and Labrador, wants to be the Minister of Tourism in this province. So, you know, from my standpoint, I'm the lucky one that has the ability to do this, but it's entrusted with a great responsibility. And you've seen earlier this week that we've committed to the tourism sector, the biggest single investment we've ever made as a government to the sector. Is it enough? No, absolutely not. We always need to be there to supply more and support more, but it's going to be one of the spokes in the wheel that we've worked together with the federal government on, and we're hoping that that's going to help you as operators delve into salvaging what we can of 2020, but more importantly, building for 2021 to be the best tourism season in our province's history. So on that note, I'm more interested in having the conversation piece than you having to listen to me. Steve, and the relationship that we've had over the last number of months since we've started this process has been fantastic, and thank you for your advocacy work. And I speak to you more than I speak to my wife, which is interesting. Well, it's good for her, I guess. Not so much for you guys, but I'm happy that we've got that great relationship. So thank you very much, Steve, for the opportunity here tonight.
Thank you, Minister. With that, I'll get right into the questions, because we've only got so much time, and we've had a lot of questions submitted. So, Minister Joly, the first one is for you and kind of builds upon your opening statement. The very first question was, given the restrictions placed on travel by the federal government, are you willing to look at extending the 75% wage subsidy past August 31st?
So, okay, first and foremost, what we've shown during this pandemic is that we're really willing to adapt and to make sure that we're there for people and we're there for businesses. And we value a lot the wage subsidy. Why? Because it's even better for workers. It keeps the relationship between workers and employers. Now, there is a consultation that was just launched by the Minister of Finance regarding the wage subsidy and what's next with the wage subsidy. So what I would love, Steve, if Hospitality Newfoundland could participate with its members to gather the comments, because I really think that we need to address the issue of seasonality and the tourism sector and the wage subsidy. So if we could use that consultation as a way to express what we think that could be done for the tourism sector, I think it's worth it. So if you could make sure to liaise with my team, Steve, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Any information that we can filter to you to help aid that, we'd be happy to try to put together for sure. Thank you. Minister Davis, the next one is for you more specifically. Can you tell us a little bit more about the new program in support of the tourism sector as announced by yourself and the Premier on Monday, and talk a little bit about what tourism businesses will benefit from this program?
That's a very good question, Steve. I was very happy to on Monday announce the $25 million program for the people in the tourism and hospitality sector. It's based on a tiered system. I think people will understand that process. Those operators that are a little smaller in nature, underneath 100,000 in revenue, would be able to avail of a $5,000 non-repayable contribution. And those that are greater than 100,000 in sales will be able to avail of a $10,000 contribution. So from the standpoint of that, the department's website will be updated in the coming days, as I mentioned, with the criteria for that and the eligibility. But I want to be clear to everybody that It's a wide variety of operations that would be available to apply for this. The criteria is not cumbersome. We took the lead from the federal government on this. We tried to make it as open as we possibly could so we can quickly assess the applications and deliver the program and get the money in the hands of the individuals that need it the most. And they need it now, and that's why we're working as fast as we can. So the program opens up on June 8th for applications, and I'm hoping that the money will start to flow June 9th to some of those operators. So, you know, from that standpoint, it's a wide variety of operators, and we figure it's going to be in excess of 2,000 businesses that will be able to avail of this. And it's not a handout, it's a hand up for the businesses because they've done so much for the industry, and we want them to exist far into the future because they've made huge investments to allow the people that travel to our province to experience what it is to be a Newfoundlander and Labradorian. And we know how good that is. And Melanie knows as well, because she, all indications there, she really knows how to ride a great skidoo in central Newfoundland. So, you know, that's a story that, first story that I've heard of Melanie at that time in the province. You know, from my standpoint, we're very happy with the program. We know there's opportunities for us to get that money out the door as quick as we can, and that's what our staff are focused on.
Can I add to that, Steve?
Sure, absolutely.
So, folks, when you're a minister, the big thing you always try to do is to battle to get, you know, your own files and your own budget for your constituents, and the people you represent, and definitely the sector you represent. And I've had the chance to work with many ministers of tourism all across the country. Bernie was referring to that because every Thursday we talk to each other. But I must say that Minister Davis, so Bernie's work should be very, very much applauded, because in these dire circumstances, when comparing to other provinces, what other provinces are doing, I think that this new budget of 25 million is really, when comparing, very good. And so I would like to congratulate him and make sure that we can continue to fight for people in the tourism sector in Newfoundland, because definitely I'm very much aware that these are very difficult times.
Thank you for that. The next question is sort of for both of you. Given that we may be, you know, as much as, I mean, it could be years, no one really knows, away from developing a vaccine, what alternate plans does the government have to get the country's economy functioning again and for people to feel safe to travel? So I guess, Minister Joly, if you wanted to comment from a federal perspective, and then perhaps Minister Davis could comment on the province's perspective.
Well, Steve, that's a very good question. I would say that's the question. So let's look at where there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think Atlantic Canada is at the forefront of the research to develop a new vaccine, because the Dalhousie is the first university in Canada to do clinical trials of the vaccine. So good news. And I think, you know, we're supporting research, we're supporting vaccine development, and we want to make sure that once that's done, we can make it available to the Canadian public and Canadians very, very quickly. That being said, meanwhile, we're still there. I feel 3 stages. There's the stabilization of the economy, making sure that businesses, entrepreneurs that are watching us right now have access to the measures, have access to the wage subsidy, can get the money, make sure they can pay their employees. Same for the rent relief, same for the CBO account, all the measures we've put in place. Second phase is reopening. So how can there be reopening while we need to mitigate the spread of the virus? And that's the phase we've just, you know, started. And so looking at what can be done is extremely important. And that's why we want to see how we can adapt our measures. And that's why also ACOA has $110 million in new funding to invest in strategic businesses and make sure that the tourism sector is well supported. And finally, it's going to be the relaunch. And definitely in that context, well, we know the tourism sector has been deeply impacted. Well, we will want to be there by your side to make sure that we can help you seize the opportunities and make sure that we have a strong tourism sector like we're so proud of in in Newfoundland and in Labrador.
And Minister Davis, if you wanted to jump in from the province's point of view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I could say ditto, I think, to what Minister Joly said, but I think some of the things is that I'd like to say is education is key. I think it's important that we all understand what we're dealing with and that COVID is going to be with us for a while. So we have to learn to live with it and take those social distancing cues that public health have talked about and really burn into our brain at this point. You know, I think as we know, life as we know it is going to change. It doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It just means it's going to be different. So until we have a vaccine, which could, as you said, Steve, could be a while, we hope that that's not the case. We hope that with the brightest minds in the world working on it all together, that we're going to be able to bring that forward on a quicker basis and deliver to the people that need it. From my standpoint, we're working very closely with the alert system that we've developed in the province to move through that with at least some semblance of clarity. We understand that businesses want to see themselves in it, and that's not as easy. We've created a business response unit here in the province that's working at about 90+% getting back to people within hours. So from that standpoint, I think it's learning to live with it, understanding that COVID will happen when we do open the economy, and how we deal with that and make our people that are visiting our establishments feel comfortable with the actions we've taken to prevent that and protect them is going to be key. And the marketing as we go forward for this, both on a national standpoint and a provincial standpoint, are going to be key. So we're developing a marketing plan for a staycation that we'll be launching in sometime in mid-June, which is going to be something that we're very happy with. And we're award-winning for these programs, so we're going to really push for that. But it's going to take all of us, everyone that's on this call, everyone that's in Newfoundland and Labrador, to open up their doors to bring people back here. We've got a great product to sell, and people will want to be here for this industry in particular. But Steve, that's the $1 million question, as I said, or in Canada's perspective, the $1 billion question. So you know, from our standpoint, Melanie and her team have been working very close with us and talking about how we're going to market this province and country to the rest of the world, to ensure that when we're able to welcome people back, and that day will come very soon, we hope, that they'll be coming in droves to the product that we built in Canada and in this province particularly.
Thank you to you both for that. You know, again, before we get a vaccine, obviously a lot of operators are very concerned that we don't just sit and wait for that moment, that we aggressively look at ways to still make people feel welcome prior to that. So, you know, certainly work for both of you to take back to your colleagues. Minister Joly, from a federal perspective with funding programs for the RDAs, in our case for ACOA, a question here regarding the eligibility of restaurants, pubs, and food and beverage establishments under ACOA funding. I wonder if you might talk about their eligibility and options for them.
So what we launched as a new program is really being the backstop of other economic measures that we've put forward, and sometimes some businesses were falling through the cracks, and so that's why we decided to create this new program. So if you're a restaurant and you don't have access to the wage subsidy or to the CEBA account because of different reasons that are very particular to your own reality, well, come and see us, because we will be there to provide a $40,000 loan with a $10,000 forgivable amount. That's what we want to do. We know that restaurants have been deeply impacted. We know that bars have been impacted also. That's why we wanted to make sure that we had solutions. Now, Steve, if there are particular cases that or a trend that you're seeing that I should know about, please let me know. Let's make sure that my team is aware and I'm aware, because we can work on solutions. And that's definitely how we've been working since the beginning. It's my second HNL Zoom in 2 months. I think we've been able to be nimble and react to your comments. The creation of the ACOA funding was based on the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago to make sure we had a tourism first approach, and that's exactly why basically we've created that fund. So my point to you is is if there's an issue with restaurants and bars, please come and see us. And if there's issue also with the BEC and the BCAP program, I know some of you have raised it. Please, let's have these conversations, because I'm really willing to see what can be done to make sure that we can get, get the right financing and right liquidity going for our operators and our hotels and our restaurants and bars.
Thank you for that. And we enjoy a very good relationship with Restaurants Canada as well. So we'll make sure we combine our efforts with them to get that information to you.
And we're in close contact with Restaurants Canada. We talk to Restaurants Canada pretty much every week.
Absolutely. Minister Davis, a question for you. What is your department doing to address the issue of unlicensed accommodations, i.e. Airbnbs and such in the province?
Well, it's a very good question. And as you know, we've had this conversation over the last number of months as well. Leading into the convention in Corner Brook, we had this conversation as well. So we committed to having a framework in place. Then COVID decided to happen and delayed that process a little bit for us. But we're very close on that framework of having it in your hands, Steve, and your team's hand to look at and see how we're going to do some consultations on that. But rest assured, we want to balance the equation here. We want to make sure there's an even playing field. We understand that Airbnbs and places like that and operators like that, we need to make sure they're brought up to a standard that better reflects the safety for the individuals that want to stay in those establishments. But we understand they're not going anywhere because they're a platform that people are utilizing now. And the biggest thing that we've seen in our end is that we're working on that framework to support the requests of H&L, but also for the people of the province. We want to ensure safety for when people stay at these establishments and bring them to a level that we can all be living with, not just from where they stay and the safety, the health and life safety side, but I mean, we've built a brand promise in this province that operators have bought into, and in some cases, that's not the same case for these unlicensed establishments. So, we're close on that, Steve, and it'll be in your hands, I would say, very, very soon, if not already on the way to you. So it's very close.
That's good to hear. It's been a key advocacy point for us. So we'll hold you to that, and hopefully we can get to that in short. So thank you for that.
As our conversations we've had, Steve, before, I said I long for those days when licensed accommodations are our main focus of conversation every day. So, that's going to be the days that we look for when this COVID is passed. So I agree with you 100%.
Thank you for that. Minister Joly, the question about marketing. What long-term strategies are in place to bring back our international markets to our country and certainly to our province here in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Okay, so that's a very good question, and it's linked to your fundamental question, Steve, that you asked at the beginning, which was, when will we get out of this? And so what's our plan meanwhile? So we're not the only one with facing this problem. Many countries around the world also are facing this problem. So Steve, what we've done, the G20 ministers of tourism and I, is we had good conversations. We had a meeting a month ago, and we all agreed, so that would be the minister in Mexico and France and in Singapore, Italy, we all agreed that we would be supporting first local tourism, then regional tourism, then eventually national tourism, and then eventually international tourism. And so what we are looking at right now through Destination Canada is supporting local initiatives and regional initiatives. So I look forward to work with Bernie on this, because we know that it is not up to Destination Canada to do international tourism marketing at this point. We need to support our people, and we need to do, things for Canadians by Canadians. So that's what we'll be doing. What would be something I would love to be working with you, Steve, and people watching us right now, would be how can we increase the trust in the travel sector, in the tourism sector? What could be the different, standards we could be working on? Because at the end of the day, we know that we have to build the trust in our sector to make sure that Canadians feel safe, and then eventually, international tourists feel safe. So I think there's leadership to be taken on that question, and I would love to hear what are the initiatives and how we can make sure that people in Newfoundland and Labrador are really working on this. So let's work together.
Thank you for that. Minister Davis, more of a local question here for you. Questions about when you think that the non-essential travel will be allowed to get around the province, the staycation term, and also will there be guidelines and protocols to follow for businesses that currently don't have guidelines available, and when do you think that they would be released?
It's a great question. When we developed the alert system, Steve, it was based on the premise that we have stopgaps in between each level to assess when we open certain things, what the impact would be on the people of the province. And we've seen from alert level 4 to now closely moving into alert level 3, which we hope will be June 8th. You've seen 28 days. My indications that I'm hearing from the public health is that those timelines will be greatly reduced, and I'm hoping greatly reduced for sure, but I'm hoping greatly reduced in between the next levels after that, which will then allow businesses to plan and open up. Clarity is the key, and we've had this conversation before about clarity. And as soon as I know when we can give an indication that people can travel around the province, we'll be doing that. And I know that Dr. Fitzgerald here in the province is going to be starting to move in that direction over the next couple of times she's in front of the media, I would think. So from my standpoint, I've always used June 8th as the basis point for that. You can go to a restaurant, albeit with limited capacity, on June 8th. So that leads you to believe that there would be ability to move around the province a little bit more freely. So from that standpoint, I view that as when we're starting to open up some regional ability to travel around the province. To your second point about the ability for us to have plans in place, nobody knows your industry better than you. So we're always working with industry players to determine what levels of scrutiny they need to have on their plans and what level of detail to put in those plans. So when your industry reaches out to our business response team with a one-page document that says, here's how we're going to operate, we bring that right to Health and Community Services through our public health side, and then they determine if that seems like a plausible plan. So what I've encouraged people to do is always submit what they think is the best, and then we'll try to massage that to make it work in the best way we can. Some of the bigger industries will have some support that way from doing that, and some of the smaller industries that may be, because each B&B or each accommodation or each tour operator is different from the next one. So the framework will be similar. What we have to do from cleanliness in the facilities, what we do from social distancing, what we do from how we eat at a bed and breakfast in the mornings, those things will be, frameworked. But the remaining information about those nuances in each and every business will be different for almost everybody, Steve, as you know yourself being in the accommodation business.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback that we've received, there are some good guidelines for the accommodation sector, for golf courses, for example, on the government website. I think the more for other sectors of our of the tourism sector would be very valuable as well, to have best practices and guidelines visible for people searching for them. Minister Joly, question for you here. Can you give assurances that tourism staff will receive either EI or the CERB until May 2021 when we hope to reopen? This sounds like it was from a business who's probably either made the decision to close or a seasonal operator.
Mm-hmm. So we know that as a government, we need to be there for people to have access to a safety net, and that we don't want them to fall through the cracks. We want them to be able to pay their rent or their mortgage or put food on the table. So definitely we will find ways to make sure that we can take that feedback from the tourism sector and find ways that people can be protected. So, we have to take decisions on the CERB in the coming days and EI, but I've been there at cabinet table defending the interest of tourism workers, which are deeply impacted by this pandemic. And I think that bearing in mind the reality of the seasonal work, it is my job and also of Seamus' jobs to make sure that we present that reality to our colleagues. And I think that Seamus is doing it very well, and I know that I'm raising it, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
And I'd like to jump in on that as well, because I can speak to directly all of our FTP calls with ministers right across the country have a similar tone as what that question was for Minister Joly, and she answers it the exact same way to us as she's answering it to you. She's going to try to be there. We understand that that's something that each province is fighting for as well. So it's not just Newfoundland and Labrador alone on this one.
Yeah,
we're all pushing that way. So I think when the federal government sees that, like we've seen with a lot of the other programs that they've moved on, whether it be from 10% to 75% for the wage subsidy, or movement on the availability of access to the loan program, we've seen them move on those, and I have no doubt that they'll be doing everything they can to do that. We're going to continue to push that as well.
Steve, I think the discussion regarding the wage subsidy and the question regarding CERB and EI are linked. And so I think that as a government, we value a lot the wage subsidy, and of course we want to make sure that there's a strong safety net. So when taking the feedback from your members regarding the wage subsidy, if you have any on the CERB and EI, please let us know, because that would be helpful, and definitely Bernie and I can continue the conversations about it.
Yeah, and it's funny, even follow-up questions asking about seasonal workers in the industry who may not qualify in October at the end of the season for EI. Yeah. Will there be additional help for them? So again, that ties directly into wage subsidies, EI, CERB questions.
And we know that's the case, and we know that Newfoundland has been extremely hard hit because there's a double whammy. There's the economic crisis, there's the pandemic, there's the drop in oil prices. We're very much aware, and Seamus is always there to remind us what is going on in his own province, and we have been there for Newfoundland. I know you guys have gone through many crises in the past, and you have a strong resilience, and we have been there for you, and we will continue to be there for you. I know I'm not from Newfoundland. You can hear it from my accent. But at the same time, I'm there to defend your interests, and I'll be there to defend your interests. And I've been screeched in, so it's as if I've been baptized.
Steve, I think she sounded like she was from the Southern Shore, actually, to be quite honest with you. But Steve, I also want to make one comment. In the chat room down below, I would normally respond to them, but I'm trying to focus on what we're talking about here. So can we get a list of those questions that are being asked in the chat room so we can try to respond to those individuals? Because those are legitimate questions too that they may think of based on what we're talking about. So I would love the ability to come back and respond to those in the future.
I appreciate that, because there's no way we'll possibly get through all the questions that everyone would have for the both of you today. We're trying to sort of get through as many as we can. So we'll hold you to that, and we'll make sure the staff get both of you those questions for sure. Speaking of questions that have come through a lot, Minister Davis, one of the questions that's been repeated is about the resident marketing campaign. So understanding that the province is planning such a marketing campaign to promote staycations in the province this summer, can you just tell people a little more about that and the plans that you have in place and what that's going to look like?
So anyone who knows how our marketing campaigns have been and how successful they have been in the past would know that that's something that we're really good at. We have a great agency of record that's working very hard on this right now. The staff in the department are really pushing hard to get this done, and this marketing is going to play a vital role in getting people the confidence they need to want to travel and highlight some of the cool things and amazing things that they can see and do across this province, because there's a very captive audience that have been sequestered in their houses for a number of months now, and a very pent-up demand that people are going to want to go. And all my friends and family that we talk with on Zoom calls or whatever have said that that's where they want to try to focus their energy and invest their money in the economy here. So there's going to be a big push for that. This plan to be released, Steve, sometime around mid-June. To be ready in the marketplace for our biggest part of the season when we get going. So that'll be a good indication to give some people a highlight on when we actually think that the market will be opened for moving around the province. And we encourage operators to, if they have good ideas, to get us those ideas and market their product to us. We've got a great opportunity there to support that as well. So we're happy that the progress we've made on this, but I look forward to seeing the finished product, and I'm sure that the people on this call understand that we're going to be pushing as hard as we can on that economic recovery, which we believe is in the tourism sector is going to have to do with marketing and confidence people have that they'll get a first-class product. We already know the product's first class. We just want to make sure people have that feeling that it's safe and ability to travel is good, right?
I think most operators in the province would welcome, the staycations, obviously for some incremental income, but certainly encourage the both of you. And if you've got a call after this with your national colleagues to even further the conversation about opening our borders, we've done a wonderful job here of flattening the curve and providing a safe and welcoming province. So the more we can get aggressive on those talks, we'd certainly appreciate that on our behalf. Question for you both.
Bernie doesn't know yet, but that's exactly the question I'll be asking the different provinces and territories minister. Hey, Bernie, you have
got a bit of time.
Well, we certainly appreciate you going to bat for us here. Question for you both on funding. Again, there's a lot of questions on various types of funding. Several questions asking about, many businesses have been forced to make improvements in infrastructure, whether it be plexiglass or other safety measures, changing their model, also for PPE for their staff and for their guests, increased sanitation measures, disinfectant, and so on. A lot of the money that's provided through provincial as well as federal programs so far have already been allotted for, other cash flow needs to pay the bills, just to keep the lights on. Will there be any measures, either federally or provincially, specifically focused on PPE or other health and safety infrastructure improvements for businesses?
Bernie, do you want to go ahead and I'll...
That'd be perfect, yeah. So, Steve, we've had this conversation at the cabinet table, at our caucus table. We understand that that's a big concern. It's a global concern. The availability of PPE and quality PPE is something that, Melanie and her team are dealing with on a national level, and I know we're dealing with on the provincial level. But at the end of the day, we're going to be focused on trying to provide support that's needed for businesses. That could be, and I know that's a very political type answer, and I hate those type answers, but from our standpoint, everything is still on the table on what we're trying to do, investments that we can make, and making sure that those gaps that exist in whether it be a federal program or a provincial program, we're going to try to support businesses. We understand the investments they've made in building their product didn't include plexiglass and PPE as well. So, we're going to try to be there to support them in any way we can. I can't commit to it today on the call, Steve, but I know we're looking at a bunch of different things we can do for industries that are impacted by this very problem, and not just whether they'll want to have it, it's the availability to get it. So, we're struggling with that as well in the province, and I know Melanie and her team are doing the same on a national scale. So I don't know if Melanie had something to add from the federal side. So
yeah, thanks, Bernie. There's three things. So, to be able to support PPE, we need to have PPE. And I think the biggest issue at the beginning is that there was a lack of PPE in the country, and we're still making bulk purchases, in Asia to have access to that PPE. But more than that, we decided to create our own supply chain across the country, and ACOA has been involved in supporting businesses in Atlantic Canada to create that. And as this new, these gowns and these gloves and masks are created, we will work with Newfoundland and Labrador to make sure that this is sent to them, that frontline workers are protected also, but at the same time that businesses that have really much more customer facing businesses that are much more into customer facing are able to have access to it. As for the fact of compensating businesses for the purchase or the retooling of their venues, well, I know my colleague Mary Ng, the Minister of Small Businesses, is seized with the issue. We are having good conversations internally about it. Should that be a formal ask from the sector, because it is fundamental to its survival? Well, Steve, I would like to know. because then that's something I could take into account. So I know that some businesses have been raising this issue. We decided to provide liquidities through the CEBA loan, but also subsidies through the $10,000 forgivable of the CEBA loan and wage subsidy, and we hope rent relief and all. So we haven't, and then based on that, businesses decide where they spend their money. But you know, if there's this is a formal ask from the tourism sector, you know, please let me know, and we'll see what can be done.
Steve, I'd just like to add to that as well, and Melanie sort of jogged my memory on this too, and it's funny that that things that people say to bring something back to you. So in the province, we have, there's 9 lines of PPE that are really in demand. All 9 lines of PPE can be made in this province now. We're into varying degrees of evaluation of that to making sure they're certified. And then once they're certified, we've invested as a government in paying for some of that research and development and making sure it can be developed. In this department in particular, we've invested in some companies, Newfoundland-based companies, to grow that industry. And at the end of the day, we're hopeful that by the time we're ready to move on mass openings, we're going to have that available to us, because we don't ever want to be caught in Canada again, and in this province in particular, not having the things we require when we need them. I think Doug Ford said it best in one of his press conferences, that he's not going to be prepared to be held hostage without that equipment anymore. So, you know, from that standpoint, every province have tried to retool where their businesses are going to avail of that services. 9 or so of those key issues or key items that are in short supply are being in some stage of manufacturing here in this province, just to give people some indication that, you know, we're working through those things. Are they all going to meet certification? I'm not sure of that yet, but we're in that process. So I'm very hopeful, and hopefully stay tuned. We'll have some news on that in the coming little while.
Thanks to you both. Yeah, you know, we've been asked a lot to identify maybe gaps where some of the programs are missing, and that's a lot of the feedback from industry has been possibly, you know, we're already bearing the burden of a lot of costs if there was remedies from either branch of government to help fund PPE and infrastructure improvements. That was a gap that had been identified. So thank you for listening to that. A question for both of you here. With restaurants opening to lower capacities and the possibility of schools opening in September, where does the province, and then Minister Joly on a national level, see group gatherings going from July to December? What are we seeing? What trends on a national level? And certainly, Minister Davis, what do you view for larger gatherings in the province?
Well, I think, Minister, would you like to take this one, or do you want me to go first?
Well, you know, my answer would be, we'll follow the public health authorities' advice. This is what we've done since the beginning of the pandemic. This has been the way that we flatten the curve in the beautiful province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but also across the country. And going against that would be basically pursuing the pandemic spread and deepening even more our economic crisis. So we have to be vigilant. We need to make sure that we follow science, and at the same time that we inform daily people, Canadians and business owners of what is the state of the virus and the you know, what's the state of the health of the community, and I think this is what is being done across the world. And at the same time, being a former business owner and being with a small business owner also, I understand the frustration of not having access to more certainty. I know that in business, you want to make sure that you know what are the rules of the games and what can be certain. And that's how you know, try to mitigate your risk, and at the same time, make sure to seize the opportunities. But that's the best information I can provide you right now.
And just to build on that a little bit, because I think all of that reigns true for this province as well. We've seen through the alert system, Steve, that you know, we've increased as we move through the alert system the amount of gatherings that we can have. You know, but I think Minister Haggie and Dr. Fitzgerald were very clear that that's going to be one of the last things that move through the system. We can't have an opportunity to have a large gathering that's going to potentially blow the system up again into a situation where we can't see success like we've seen, as Melanie just said. Part of the things that we've seen is pivoting in this industry already. We've had concerts that were supposed to happen moving to a digital media, which is an important piece. And I think that's where we as a government can invest and support operators in how they do things. And that's not to say that we won't get back to these big scale events, but I think leading into the summer, that's going to be a challenge. But as we move into the fall, that will the loosening of these restrictions, but we're going to take our lead from public health, and we've been successful in doing that in this province right now. And it's not just public health, it's the people in the province that put us in this situation. They listen to the guidelines, and I know it's challenging when you look out the window and see 20 degrees about not doing what you'd love to do. But at the end of the day, you know, we'll take the lead from public health, and we're going to push as far as we can. As the minister responsible for business, I'm going to push as far as I can to have businesses open in the fast but safe way. So I'm going to continue to advocate for that. But that's public health is going to take lead on that, as Melanie just said.
And I can't wait to go to a Alan Doyle concert. But meanwhile, I'll just listen to him online.
Alan Doyle is a pretty good ambassador for our province, clearly. That's true. An hour goes by incredibly quick, guys. And there's so many questions that are coming through. So I do appreciate your offer we will get these questions to you. There's no way we'll get through them all now. And given that we're winding down our time, you know, we've got roughly, I think, 240 operators and partners who joined us today. So it clearly shows that, you know, people are taking the issues that are facing tourism very seriously and wanted to hear from you guys. So I'd like to give you both maybe a chance just to have sort of a closing statement to everyone on the line right now before I clue things up formally. So maybe Minister Davis, I'll start with you from a provincial point of view and then head to Minister Joly.
Excellent, Steve. I just want to say a big thank you. This is better than any question period I've ever had in the House of Assembly. Generally, I love the idea of interacting with people. It's unfortunate that we couldn't have people on the call ask the questions and deal with them that way. It's just not conducive for how we deal with it in this post-COVID reality. But, you know, this is being Tourism Week, and I know we're celebrating it a little differently this week, and it doesn't feel as a celebratory time. But we've got to look at how far we've come as an industry and how big a role we play in this province. $1.14 billion, 2,700 businesses, 20,000 people working in the industry. That's big numbers, and it's not small potatoes like people think. And we've done a good job in the industry, not so much me, but you guys, in telling people that story. And we're going to continue to push that story, that narrative, because people got to understand that the individuals that are building the tourism sector are our neighbors and people that are close to us. It's not faceless corporations. And my biggest thing that I want to leave people with is our doors open in our department. We want to get funding out the door as quick as we can. I encourage you to apply for the new program that we've announced this week. Is it the answer that's going to solve all the problems? Absolutely not. We knew that when we developed it, but we wanted it to be as far-reaching as possible, building on some of the investments that the federal government have made. And I'm sure there will be more coming in the future from the federal government as well as the province to support business. We're looking at options every day, and I encourage people to bring those concerns forward each and every day. And I would be remiss if I didn't say a big thank you to H&L for giving us this great opportunity to engage with people in this digital media, in digital form. But I would be disappointed if I didn't say to Steve and Craig and your team that it's been great working with you throughout this. And you know, you're a testament to the industry itself and the program that was announced earlier this week. You had a very big hand in as a team, and thank you for your support on that as well.
Thank you, Minister Davis. Minister Joly, final comments from yourself.
So thank you, Steve. Apparently, I have a Port-au-Port accent, so I was very happy to to see that in the chat room. So thanks, folks, for making me feel Newfoundlander during this Zoom. So listen, I get it. I know this is a very, very, very difficult time. I know that your livelihoods are impacted by what's going on. I know that this is a very stressful time, and that we were such on a good momentum that after 2017 and the 150th and then following that, things were going so well in the tourism sector, and now we have to deal with the pandemic and the economic crisis. We were there during the good days. We are here now, and we'll continue to be there. So you can trust the fact that the federal government is not only there to have your back, but we will be with you, working with you to rebuild the sector and to make sure that your business that has been impacted by this and all your work, your lifelong work, will be valued, considered, and saved. So the idea is to make sure right now that you folks can have access to our economic measures, that we can help as much businesses to survive this economic crisis, to see what are the gaps within the system, to identify them, to mend them, and then basically help you cross the bridge and get to the other side of the shore. That's where we're at, and that's why we're putting money on the table. And so let's make sure that we continue to work with Hospitality Newfoundland, that you continue to reach out to Goody, because I know she reached out to me. That same for all your colleagues, all our colleagues across Newfoundland. And we will continue to have good partnership with the province. And Bernie and I text each other pretty much every day. We talk to each other a lot, because we know we have to be there together, working very collaboratively to make sure that we can defend the sector we represent. So great to talk to you. Let's make sure, Steve, that we have another Zoom like this in a couple of weeks. And let's make sure that we all stand together as we're bracing to continue to fight the impacts of this economic crisis and this pandemic. So keep it up, folks, and looking forward to continue to partnering with you.
Thank you, Minister. Tourism and hospitality is certainly a resilient industry, but we're hurting right now. And, we do need support, and we do need leadership from government. So I appreciate both of you taking the time to be here today to listen to questions from industry and from operators during what has been a really, really challenging time. So thank you both. Before we end today's event, I'd just like to acknowledge once again that it is Tourism Week, and we encourage you all to keep an extra eye out to the H&L website, social media channels, to keep informed on all the things that we're doing this week to highlight the amazing tourism community in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a very diverse industry, and it provides varying products and experiences, but we are one industry, and Tourism Week is the perfect opportunity to highlight this. I'd just like to take a quick second to thank our partners who support H&L and the tourism industry, including TIAC, Destination Canada, the Hotel Association of Canada, Restaurants Canada, and Tourism HR Canada on a national level. And of course, our DMOs here provincially, Adventure Central, Destination Labrador, Destination St. John's, Go Western Newfoundland, and Legendary Coast of Eastern Newfoundland. If you're not receiving our daily emails on tourism industry updates and specifically regarding the COVID-19 crisis, please visit our COVID page on hnl.ca to sign up. Thank you once again to Minister Joly, Minister Davis, and Minister O'Regan for joining us today. It was really great to hear your perspective on some of the challenges, but also the opportunities that our industry is facing and directly addressing some of the industry's concerns in our province. Please enjoy the rest of your week, and everyone, please stay safe. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.